Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, dear Metanauts. Welcome to this special edition of X Night, and welcome to Cambodia on this very, very special day. My name is Thomas, and I'm the organizer and curator of Immersive X, the next reality festival. And together with my team at VM People, I provide a stage for extraordinary people and the powerful stories they bring to life. When our dear friend Tom Nickel approached me about the story we are about to hear tonight, I didn't have to think twice. We live in really strange times. We live in a time where many forces seem determined to divide us, to drive us apart, sowing distrust and fear. So the big question is, what can we do? Those of us who refuse to accept this, what can we do in return? And one powerful antidote is to tell each other stories. Because stories have the ability to transport us into the lives of others, allowing us to share their experiences, to step into their shoes, if only for a moment. Unlike raw data or abstract facts, stories have the power to shift our perspective, to move our hearts, change our thinking, and inspire us to act differently. Tonight, we will hear one such story, a story that reminds us never to lose faith in our shared humanity, even in the darkest of times. And now I will hand it over to our moderator for tonight, to Tom Nickel. Tom.
Yeah. Well, excellent introduction as always, Thomas. Not to lose faith in our humanity in even the darkest of times. And we are here on the 50th anniversary of one of those darkest of times, a time when a capital city of a country, Phnom Penh, with 3, 4, who knows how many million people were living there at the time, was completely taken over by a small invading army and emptied. A city was emptied in a day of all of its people, who were then sent out into the countryside and worked on crazy labor projects for years. It's one of the darkest events in modern times, but this is going to be a story within a story within a story. We're going to look at one individual family's experience of that day, maybe make it a little bit more personal and real to all of us. But then we're going to time travel 50 years from that dark moment to the present. And we're going to take a glimpse at Cambodia now and see what they did, what in the human spirit they drew on to rebuild their country and make it a vibrant, young, artistically oriented place that it is today. Now, this is VR, and for people who are hearing background video, we want to listen to those videos later, but we don't want to now. If you are still being annoyed by that, you can go to your volume settings off your menu and turn the world volume off for the moment. I'll remind you to turn it back on again when we want it. Not quite sure why there's that glitch, but it's easy to deal with. A more significant glitch is the fact that we're hoping for 2 artists from Cambodia to be with us today. For some reason, they were here earlier, but not now. And maybe they'll be joining us. I have done VR events from Phnom Penh all over the world. The Wi-Fi, the power grid there. It's a pretty extraordinary day in Phnom Penh. Don't know what's happening. I hope that my friend Svay Sanuch will be able to join us, and we're looking at a picture of him right here. So I'm going to start to set the scene more, and I was hoping to moderate Sanuch because it was actually his brother, the picture over further to the right, who drew all of these paintings, telling the story of his family's experience on the day the Khmer Rouge took over Phnom Penh. those pictures were turned into JPEGs that we could then bring into VR and set up to walk around. And the idea was to listen to Sanuch tell his story using each of these paintings as a prop. And then when we're through with that, we have some modern Cambodia stuff to show what he's doing 50 years later and what other people are doing 50 years later. As it turns out, you might have to settle for me as the narrator. To hear the story in Sanuch's own voice is very powerful. I met Sanuch myself a number of years ago in Cambodia around VR. I was going to Cambodia with a good friend of mine who's here today to record what artists do there, keeping their culture alive in 360 videos, bringing those videos back to the United States to show them to Cambodians who are part of the diaspora who left the country and to other people who love the country and want to see what's going on there now. That first meeting between me and Sanuch years ago has led to a great friendship. And once again, I'm still hoping he'll be able to join us here. I'm kind of making words, hoping so, but something might have gone wrong in Phnom Penh. No big surprise. So here we go. I think part one of the story we've already done. It's to get clearly in your minds that in, times that we can remember, a rebel army, and I'm not going to go too much into the backstory, although believe me, folks, it ties into the United States and the Vietnam War and a lot of things, a lot of geopolitical things. That rebel army came into a city, but let's now all together look at it through the eyes of one family. So why don't we, as a group, join me as we begin to take in each of these pictures to tell quite a story. Once again, my friend Sanuch's brother is named Ken, and Ken Svay is dead now, but he was a pretty famous Cambodian artist, and this is the kind of art he did, a kind of an impressionist realism, I guess you'd call it. There are books of his works. He's a pretty well-known and I think, is that Sanuch up there? No, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, let's see. Digitally wired. No, okay. But anyway, this is the type of painting that Ken Svay did. He's the older brother of Sanuch. And the background to get in mind is that these people were living in Phnom Penh, but the rest of the country of Cambodia had already been taken over by the Khmer Rouge. And the city of Phnom Penh itself was, shelled for days, for weeks. But still, no one living there quite knew what was about to happen. And on the morning that changed everything, what we see in this painting is down here in this corner, here's the family kind of sleeping in the basement. That's what everybody had to do then. And the mother gets up to make breakfast. And we see the red there. She was hit by shrapnel. Some random shelling from somewhere by the Khmer Rouge at the outskirts of town where his family lived hit the mother, and she was seriously wounded. Now remember, they didn't know yet what we know, that this was going to be the day that the Khmer Rouge took over Phnom Penh. All they knew was that their mother was wounded. Let's move on now. And here we see what Sanuch calls desperate measures. Everybody was, in American terms, hunkered down, but they had to leave their home. They had to take their mother to a hospital. Were there even any hospitals functioning? They didn't know, but they were desperate. Put yourself in their shoes. Their mother had just been hit by shrapnel. They put her into a cart, and they're now going to look for a hospital that's open that will take them. Take it all in. We move on to the third painting, which he calls The Weight of Guilt. I'm not quite sure. This is why we'd really want to have Sanuch here to say, who's feeling guilty? They're doing everything they can, risking their lives in frightening, scary times. What Sanuch now says is, as we're taking our mother to this hospital, we're hearing shelling, mortar, rifle sounds. The world is changing all around them in a scary way. They don't know what's going on. They come to a hospital, but look, it's full. It's completely full. There's no beds. The people at the hospital, they see an old lady, but they have to say, we can't help you. This is Sanuch's title, The Weight of Guilt. Does he mean that the people at the hospital should feel guilty? What does he mean? I don't know, but imagine that you've risked your life to try to save your mother. You finally get there. We've made it to the hospital. And now you're turned away. That was what happened to them. They had to leave that hospital. And as they left, what was happening? If these black-dressed soldiers look young, it's because they were. These were largely young people, teenage boys in many cases, from the hills, the hinterlands, the less developed parts of Cambodia. Their envy, their jealousy, their negative feelings about the city people were exploited, perhaps, by communists allied with China and Mao, who funded the Khmer Rouge. And this is his impressionistic picture of this young band of armed people, mostly young males, marching into the city. As some of you noticed, there are very famous historical photographs, and some of them are posted back in the room to the right up there, of an army coming in with tanks and jeeps and all the instruments of warfare. The people didn't know what to make of this. You'll see in one of the photographs there that some people just climbed on the tanks, thinking like, maybe these are our liberators. Nobody knew. But they found out pretty quickly. Meanwhile, we're thinking about major geo-historical moments. Power battle between so-called Western values of democracy and the international revolution at that time that Mao and the Communist Party of China was trying to perpetuate. All that Sanuch and his brother knew was they needed to save their mother. There's a type of motored vehicle used in a lot of parts of Asia. You can see them in Cambodia still today. It's called a cyclo. It's a tricycle where someone stands at the back and pedals, and there's a cart at the front. And they were able to, when they were expelled from that first hospital, find a cyclo driver who was willing to try to take them, even despite the fact that there was soldiers marching into the city. There was shelling going over, where this guy, without asking for any payment, said, okay, I'll take your mom to another hospital. We'll see what we can do. And so the male who's looking at us there is Ken Svay, the man who painted these things, and then his younger brother Sanuch, who still might be joining us, and then the mom, taking a tricycle ride, still hoping that they will find a hospital, which they did. Sanuch and his brother Ken did find a hospital that was willing to take her, and they had to put her on the floor. Your own mother, bleeding out, now on the floor of the intensive care unit of maybe the last remaining hospital in Phnom Penh in operation at that time. Hospitals around the world operate very, very differently. I see people here from Africa. Hi there, Wayaki, who knows that if you don't show that you can pay, you either don't get into the hospital or, even worse, you don't get out. And the way that they paid in advance, because no one even knew if money was going to be any value at that point, they paid in their blood. So this is a pretty powerful picture of first Ken Svay giving blood in return for this hospital being willing to treat their mother. This all going down against the backdrop of violence and machine guns, shelling, rifles. But the Khmer Rouge and the larger geopolitical story is about to intersect even more intimately with Sanuch and Ken taking care of their mothers. The Khmer Rouge arrives at the hospital where their mother is now on some sort of a table, and they're told, you have to leave. This is them saying farewell to their mother, asking forgiveness for leaving her alone. And you might have noticed that the title of this event, Sanuch's title, is I Killed My Mom. If we all imagine ourselves in his situation, we're thinking, you did everything you could. It was an act of bravery and family pulling together to try to do anything. That's all true, but there's a lot of truths in all these complex scenarios, and what he is thinking the most is he had to say farewell to his mother and ask for her forgiveness for leaving her alone, because now Khmer Rouge soldiers have come and said, get out of here. Get out of here right now. The whole population wasn't being just machine gunned to death immediately. They were being herded en masse into a gigantic labor force that would labor on incredible, crazy projects for the next 4 years. You can't stay here in this hospital with your mother. You have to join everybody that we're sending out of the city around to the countryside to work on the projects that we have in mind for you. He calls this the crossroads. This was his decision. Now we are leaving our mother alone, still alive, in the hospital, because the Khmer Rouge gunmen are saying, you either going to get shot right now or you're going to leave. And so they left. Where did they go? What would you do? What would you do? Again, maybe a lot of people know the big picture story, but this is seeing it through the eyes of one family, a mother, 2 sons, now running, turning tail and running. We're going to go to where he ran to in a minute. Before we do, the reason there's kind of an opening here is, let me just explain where we are, what world we're in. So is a 360, a panoramic JPEG image that Sanuch himself took at the center of Phnom Penh. This is called Wat Phnom. This is a temple that was where Phnom Penh initially grew up around, on a little hill, like a temple on a hill. That's kind of what Phnom Penh means. And you can see the Buddhist imagery. Phnom Penh is a 95% Buddhist country, Theravadan Buddhist country. It has been for quite a long time. And so that's the the world we're in. You can also see in the other direction a skyscraper. Phnom Penh is a modern city, probably up to 7 or 8 million now, with really tall buildings like that, with roof places where you can go and get a drink and look out over a modern city. So it's got the Buddhist past. There's relics of the past everywhere you look, but it's also a modern city. So now let's follow them over here. And here's where most of all I need Sanuch. I spent a lot of time with him. I know the rough contours of his story, which is why I'm able to stand in here. There's a lot that's still kind of mysterious to me. A lot of what people who survived the 4 years of Khmer Rouge genocide, and just to put a fine point on that picture, as people probably know, people like Sanuch and his brother did not tend to survive. Like a lot of autocracies or dictatorship, the Khmer Rouge understood that artists and intellectuals were their natural enemy and natural threat. Thus, anyone who was known to be an artist would just be killed. Anyone who wore glasses was a good candidate to just be killed, because you were probably an intellectual if you could read. I'm not so sure what Svay Sanuch means, seeking refuge. They found, I believe, Svay is his family's last name, and I think that there is some sort of a little monastery, a little temple in the forest outside of Phnom Penh that the two brothers came to seeking refuge. This is them meeting a forest monk, and they're saying, "Can you shelter us?" We're going to do some milling around afterwards, and you can notice that between these two pictures, there's another one of these 360 pictures inside a Cambodian Buddhist temple. You can step inside that bubble, and it gives you a sense of the iconography and what it feels like to be in a place like that. I don't think that where Ken and Sanuch went at that time was anywhere near as ornate as the temple you see there. They were brought inside and shown in the basement a bunch of other people in hiding. So, what happened when the city was emptied? Some people just, as you can see in the pictures, just joined the thousands and thousands of people driven down the national highway out into the countryside. Others tried to temporarily take refuge someplace, hiding in this case in the basement of a monastery in the forest just outside of Phnom Penh. And this is, for the moment, where that story ends. Ken and Sanuch stayed hidden in this basement for a while, but they left and joined the masses of people being herded into the countryside, into work gangs. That's a whole other story. This is the story 50 years later of Sanuch saying, "I killed my mom." What he means is, I did everything I could. There were forces way beyond my control, but nevertheless, I have to face the fact that I left my mother alive on an operating table in a hospital with crazy Khmer Rouge soldiers all around her, and that was the last they ever saw of her. So these paintings were an act of personal redemption, maybe internal reconciliation for Ken, doing the paintings, and then his brother Sanuch curated those paintings. They've been shown in Phnom Penh, and now we're lucky enough to expose them to a world audience here in VR. The story of what he and other people did for those 4 years is a story for another time. But I'll tell a quick outline for those of you who don't know. Cambodia's troubles weren't over. The Khmer Rouge closed off the country for 4 years. You couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. There was no message systems coming in. There was no telephone. There was no nothing. If you happened to have been somebody just sailing in, and they were near the shore of Cambodia during those 4 years, and you got too close or you got onto the shore, you were immediately captured. It didn't matter if you were from Australia, from anywhere. And there were Westerners during those 4 years who inadvertently found themselves in the clutches of the Khmer Rouge. And like I say, they were trying to, at risk of putting too fine a point on it, make Cambodia great again. That was the idea. As some of you may know, around the years 900, 1000 AD, Cambodia was the most advanced country in the world. Angkor Wat, which is in the northern part of Cambodia, and is still the largest religious structure ever built by humans that we know of, at least so far. And the Khmer Empire was able to dominate most of Southeast Asia, build such amazing things as Angkor Wat because of certain accidents of their rivers and their history, the fertility of the land, the amount of rice harvests they could have, and then the knowledge of hydrology, of moving water from place to place that they were able to come up with. That was Angkor. And that was the goal of the Khmer Rouge, was to reestablish the dominion of Angkor, to make Cambodia great again. That was the point. And these populations worked at physical labor, building earthworks and building dams, trying to emulate the hydrology projects of the Khmer Rouge. They were crazy projects. They weren't well thought through. But when your day's work was over, your day wasn't over, because there was hours and hours of political indoctrination sessions every day. And there are other survivors who, some just want to lock it up inside and never talk about it, but some do talk about what it was like to be in those times. I know a little bit about it. There's a couple people here that might too, and we can go there. But Cambodia as a country is very sensitive to this. They don't want to be thought of as the country where everybody died. It's estimated that 25% of the population was killed during those 4 years. After 4 years, the Vietnamese came and invaded Cambodia and drove out the Khmer Rouge. Actually drove them to the northwest, to the extreme northwest part of the country. They didn't kill them all. And there's probably ex-Khmer Rouge people still living there now. But for the next 11 years, the South Vietnamese ran Cambodia kind of as their colony. And it wasn't until the early 90s, I'm skipping a lot of history here, where the United Nations basically said, we can't keep doing this. We need to have elections and bring Cambodia back to its own autonomy as a nation, which I believe happened in 1994. And someone was elected the premier of Cambodia. Cambodia became, in some ways, free of South Vietnam and became its own country again. Now just take a thought about that for a minute. You have a traumatized population. Trauma is something that we think about a lot today. We think of it individually. We think of things that might have happened to us in our past to traumatize us. How do we resolve that trauma so we can live freely again and not have our behavior unconsciously determined by the trauma inside us? If there was ever a nationally shared trauma, this would have to be it. How do you come back? How do you begin to live freely as a nation again, holding on to that kind of trauma? Individually, maybe we can understand Sanuch saying, I killed my mom, as part of his own personal trauma resolution. What the country as a whole did was look into itself, look into its own heritage, look into its own unique Khmer cultural traditions, and slowly build back. There was a significant diaspora of people who got away before the Khmer Rouge came. They could see it coming. Many of those Cambodians live in places like Long Beach, California, or Lowell, Mass. now. Many of them successfully started new lives. Maybe they locked their own trauma up inside and just want to think about their life now. But some of them said, no, I'm going to go back. I'm going to find out if any artists, any of the people who can be the standard bearers of the Cambodian tradition survived. And if they did, we will honor them and respect them and see if we can have them be teachers and pass along their traditions of Khmer instrumentation before it's lost forever. And that is exactly what happened. One of the people here in this room right now who probably doesn't want to speak in public was an American who helped a young Cambodian go back to Cambodia, find some of the artists who pretended that they were barbers or taxi drivers and somehow were able to survive those years. And those schools were built and their traditions did stay alive. And now Cambodian Living Arts and other arts organizations are some of the most prominent institutions in the country. The country's proud of its unique instruments. We have some pictures of it around here. And here's how the event is supposed to go today. Not only was I hoping that... Yeah.
If you open your menu, click on the...
Let's take a breath here for a second. But anyway, in addition to having Sanuch here to do a more personal testament to these paintings than I've been able to do, we also were planning on having, but we're going to be able to show both of these in video, so you're not going to be totally left out of these folks. Someone who has made her life work be to gather with a grown-up adult Khmer musicians and go out to the countryside and show the people there, especially the young people. Cambodia is actually one of the youngest demographically countries in the world today. And the group called the Khmer Magic Music Bus, their leader is an astonishingly professional and wonderful singer named Sema Thorn, the leader of the Khmer Magic Music Bus. And they repeatedly go out into remote villages just to show the people their own cultural heritage. I was hoping that Sema was going to be here right now because this wants to. There's stories and stories. There's the overview story of what happened. There's the one family story of what happened. But then there's all the individuals who were part of the rebuilding of Cambodia and their story. And to have Sema here talking about what it means for her to bring the music out to the countryside is really something. But now all of that sort of background video, since we don't have Sema, we at least do have her through video. So come on here, and all this video glitching, maybe we can get some payoff. And I'm going to show you Sema Thorn.
Not going anywhere.
So everybody, please turn your world volume back up.
Yes. So once again,
you can hear the video.
Those of you who overcame the glitch by turning off your world, now it's time to turn it back on again. And why we're showing this video, it's a catchy song, but it's going to show you what Cambodia looks like today. It'll start in the city. It'll move to the country. You can see the kids. You can see the music. It's not as good as Sema, but at least we get to see her somehow. Here goes. So just breathe that one in for a second, and that's Cambodia today. I am fortunate enough to have ridden on that bus with those folks. I know most of them. I've seen the delight on the kids from watching to then picking up the instruments and dancing. Happens over and over, and it's still happening now. So this is the next layer of the story. We're not just leaving it with, wow, something really dark happened. It was literally reaching into their own traditions that brought the country back, and it continues in this way. A lot I could say. I don't know if anybody noticed. There's so many details. There's a lot of beautiful Cambodian instruments, and one of them you could see a man who had a kind of a gourd-like thing. He had it right over his heart, called a Kasai Dev, and it literally amplifies the sound of your own heart beating. It's a stringed instrument, but with a gourd over your heart, so it makes the resonant sound of your heart along with the plucking of the strings of that instrument. Another famous, now a World Heritage instrument in Khmer culture is the chape, and it's a long-necked guitar. It almost looks like something from the Mississippi Delta in the United States, the home of the American blues. And the American blues were about telling stories about life within a simple musical structure, and that's what that instrument does. In the old days, people would go around. You'd kind of call it Khmer rap. They'd go around from village to village saying what was going on, telling the news, playing strings on their guitar, and rapping out the story of what was going on. Now, that instrument is now a World Heritage instrument, and many young people in Cambodia play it and play it in bands and play it for big crowds. That might not have happened at all. The number of people who could play these instruments was probably down to the number of fingers on your hand at that time. And but now it's thriving again. We are hoping
Tom,
to do some. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for telling this story. I don't know how about you guys in the audience. You were telling this, although it was not your personal story, you managed to somehow, transporting us to the time 50 years ago, and with so much empathy. And I think that's a really great achievement. Thank you very much for running us through this story. Warm emoji applause for Tom, please.
Yeah. And we got one more brief segment here too, because I thank you, Thomas, and it is personal for me for a lot of reasons. One of my best friends is an American who helped that early process of finding Cambodian artists, and it's because of him that I know a lot of these folks. So it is really personal for me. In fact, I kind of love Svay Ma, and I'm really sad she's not with us today. But who knows? Maybe they'll still join, and maybe we'll be doing another event on Sunday. We're scheduled. Who knows? But you might also be wondering, what happened to Sanuch. He is an artist. He came back. He worked as Cambodia rebuilt and became a modern country. In the last years of his career, he's about 78 now, I believe. And but in the last years of his career, he worked in advertising in Phnom Penh, and he became a video expert. He's an unusual artist. He has the artistic vision, but he's also really good with technology. So he made videos for an advertising company there, and then since he's retired, he has really only had one mission. I was in Cambodia making a presentation about virtual reality, believe it or not, and it was very well attended. And people came up to me and asked questions, and after everybody had left, there was one guy still sitting there waiting for his turn. He wanted to be last, and it was Sanuch. And he came up and he said, "I love your presentation on VR. What I want to do is I want to show this virtual reality to young people in orphanages or in poor parts of rural Cambodia. That's all I want to do. I don't want to get rich. I don't want to get famous. I just want to do that." And I said, "Man, we're going to do everything we can to do that together." Well, he's done a heck of a better job of it than me, and we can actually show he is so cool at making video and getting other people to help us that we have one last brief video to show that is really just mind-blowing. It's already mind-blowing to think of, virtual reality somehow telling the story of what happened 50 years ago in Phnom Penh. Well, watch this.
Entertain rural kids. Education is a bridge that connects dreams to reality.
That's Angkor Wat.
But for children in remote villages like Rong Vien, 400 kilometers northwest, or Prey Spat School Children's Center, access to modern tools can feel like an impossible dream. That's where I come in. My journey began with one simple idea. I do what Grandpa did. He taught me how to create something from nothing, using whatever was available. Today, I bring that same spirit into classrooms across Cambodia. When I arrive at each school, my goal is simple: to spark imagination and make learning fun. And it all starts here, with this VR headset. The process might look high-tech, but its heart lies in tradition. It's about creating something meaningful, one stroke at a time. Upload a reference picture. First, we upload a reference image, a bird, a flower, or even a dragon. Anything their young minds can imagine. 2. Mirror it. Then we mirror it. This helps us focus on symmetry and balance, just like drawing on paper. 3. Draw the contour with small strokes. Using a virtual paintbrush, we carefully sketch the outline. Each stroke brings the picture closer to life. 4. Sketch the 3D form. Next, we add depth. The flat image transforms into a three-dimensional masterpiece right before their eyes. 5. Paint over with a flat brush. Finally, we fill it in with color. Bold, bright, and full of energy. Just like these kids. 6. Duplicate and rebrush. The best part? Once it's done, the model can be duplicated and customized endlessly. Every child gets to put their own spin on it. One by one, they follow Grandpa's way, turning imagination into reality. For many of them, this is their first experience with technology. But more importantly, it's a lesson in creativity, patience, and teamwork. These children remind me why I started this journey. They have boundless potential, and all they need is a little guidance, and maybe a VR headset to unlock it. From Rong Vien to Prey Spat, the methodology stays the same. I do what Grandpa did, because sometimes the simplest ideas leave the biggest impact. Together, we're not just teaching art, we're building futures.
Yeah, so that's something you don't see every day. We have enough trouble getting our VR working in the comfort of our Western homes with our always working Wi-Fi. Not Wayaki over there, but most of us here do. But to go out into these remote villages, obviously they're not getting Wi-Fi. He's got apps already loaded on the headset. They're not going to depend on that. But just to be able to make this work in an environment where it's always 95 degrees Fahrenheit and 95% relative humidity, it's hot. These headsets heat up and they glitch out. It's unthinkable what he has to go through to do this. But he does it over and over and over again. And so that's, where we want to end it with that kind of homage to human resilience, a human spirit. It's selfless for him. He's just doing it because he needs to do it. Again, maybe they will be able to join us Sunday, but it would have been great to be able to ask them questions. I will do my best to take any questions if people have them. And otherwise, I'll just say there's a lot of browsing around here. In addition to this 360 showing a temple, there's a couple of 360 bubbles up in this room here. One of them shows a floating village. The lake that Angkor Wat was built on is one of the largest freshwater lakes in Asia. And there's areas of the lake that's all water and wetlands, and people live there. They live in a floating village, and you can step inside that bubble and feel for a minute what it would be like to be there, where kids learn how to paddle a little canoe before they even learn how to walk. And more pictures to go, but that is our event for today. I'm glad that you stayed to the end. And again, if anyone has any questions, either ask them now or come up and talk. Okay, Virtual. That Virtual Pebble? Go ahead. What you got, Virtual?
Yeah, I was wondering more about the initial purpose of your trip to Cambodia, or what you did while you were there.
And it's a VR story too, and it gets personal. As I mentioned it, I'm just really lucky that one of my closest friends was very deeply involved in the rebuilding of Cambodia and its arts, and I believe was 2016, something like that. We went there together, and I was just learning to make 360 video for VR at that time. There's people who will say 360 video isn't real VR. I don't know what that means, but all I know is that it's an immersive experience. You can just step inside these pictures or inside these videos and feel you're there. Well, if you know anything about fundraising, what you're supposed to do in fundraising is dramatize the benefit, right? You're supposed to show people who are contributing really everybody in the most real way you can what their contributions are leading to. That was my goal. It was to show what Cambodian Living Arts does, going out into the village and showing kids and people. And I have made a considerable number of these, brought them back and showed them at fundraisers here in America, and that was my initial reason for doing it. I ended up, like a lot of people, falling in love with Cambodia. Angelina Jolie is someone a whole lot more famous than me, who went to Cambodia to make her Tomb Raider series, and she fell in love with Cambodia too. A lot of people who just go there do. It's a beautiful country. Angelina Jolie could probably be president of Cambodia if she wanted to. She is so popular there. She adopted a number of Cambodian children. She has a beautiful residence there, and she takes really good care of them. So it's a really lovable country, and I was really fortunate to not just be a tourist, but be someone who was introduced to really some of the movers and shakers of the country. I've gone there a lot more times, and I'll just tell one more personal story, which is that on March 3rd, 2020, I was about to get on a plane, fly to Cambodia again, and Angkor Wat, like I said, is the largest religious structure that we've discovered so far, but it is believed that there are even much more extensive ruins of old Angkor stuff off to the 100 miles away. And I was going to go with Sanuch, and we were going to make 360 videos of some of the new Angkor findings. But if you're listening, March 3rd, 2020 was whenever the world decided, wait a minute, we got a pandemic on. And I decided, well, I guess I'm not going to fly to Cambodia, because if there's a pandemic, I'd want to be in the great United States. Well, as it turns out, the great United States didn't do such a good job in the pandemic. In fact, the United States had the worst record in the pandemic. You know who had the best record in the pandemic? Cambodia. Go Google it. Cambodia, with the help of China, was able to have actually the lowest death rate of any country. I would have been much better off if I'd gone to Cambodia. And I haven't been back since. During the pandemic, we did a series of shows where we brought together some of the musicians that you saw in that video. They came together in a location in Phnom Penh. We mixed their sound all down into one channel, fed it onto the internet, and got it into virtual reality. We had a live concert of those musicians into Alt Space VR. We did 6 of them. It was pretty stressful. It almost killed me. I'm kidding, but it was. Live events are inherently stressful. But I've been able to keep my relationship with those folks going by bringing Cambodia into virtual reality. And this is just another little example of that. So thanks for the question. I'm going to give you one shot, Morgs. Anything you want to add to that? This is my now, I guess, you want to add anything to your story about Cambodia, Morgs?
No, I don't really have anything to offer. I enjoy hearing you tell your perspective on it. It helps me to get a better perspective on what's going on. So no, I don't really have anything particular to add.
Yeah, he's a very humble guy, and it was pretty heroic to be an American doing what he did in the 90s there, and he could tell you stories for the rest of the day. But anyway, thanks for being here, Morgs, and thanks for introducing me to Cambodia. So, yeah. How about anybody else? Any other questions? And see any hands going up, or just speak out if you got anything you'd like to ask about. Okay. Well, that's... there's a lot more to Cambodia now. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. It is a very young country. It does have a very vibrant artistic scene. I don't know about essentialism of countries. Can you really generalize? But Cambodians tend to be really interested in arts and music and culture, and it is a beautiful place to be. They also have a dictator. A guy who was the longest serving dictator maybe in the world. His name was Hun Sen. He's the guy that won that election when the United Nations said it's time to have an election. This guy Hun Sen, and he consolidated his power, and then just recently, about a year or so ago, passed the power on to his son. So not to be sugarcoating things, On one hand, there is an iron-fisted dictator there. On the other hand, the country's doing pretty well and is doing an interesting job of walking that line between being open to the West and open to China, and trying to reap the benefits of both, which is what small countries like Cambodia need to do. So again, the story gets a lot more complicated the more you go. But anyway, thanks for asking that. How about anybody else? I'll make one other thing then, if no one's going to say something, which is there's two people here. One of them says XR Girls, one of them says Africa VR. Sanuch did do this event last year. It was the number 49 has tremendous significance in Buddhism, perhaps more than 50 does to Westerners. And he first imagined this show, I Killed My Mom, a year ago. And he was able to, because of the magic of VR, was able to tell this story, to put these pictures up and tell the story himself, not me telling it, for a group of young people, young women mostly, teenagers, in Nairobi, Kenya. All thanks to Wayaki over there, Africa VR, and Diana, XR Girls. And those girls, those young people were so moved, they weren't thinking about geopolitics and Chairman Mao and any of that kind of stuff. What they were thinking about was their mothers. I bring this up because I love Paul and Diana, but also to say that the story goes a lot of directions. Remember, this is a story about a guy and his mom. And when these young women heard the story, they were just overcome with feelings about their own mothers, about the ways that they'd been there for their moms, the ways they hadn't been there for their mom. And immediately, Wayaki and Diana organized kind of a ritual, had each of those young people kind of light a VR candle and say something to their mom that they really needed to say from their heart, based on the feelings and the emotions that came up just from Wayaki telling that story. So his story, it was perhaps something about his own trauma, but it also is a story, like Thomas said in the beginning, that can help us think about the human spirit and its resiliency after the darkest times. But now it's moving around the world. It's now touched the hearts of a group of young women in Nairobi who took something about their relationship with their mom out of it and spoke to their mothers perhaps in a way that they hadn't before and wouldn't otherwise. You want to say anything about that, Diana?
Yeah, it was quite a precious moment for all of us here in Nairobi, and especially the girls, as you said, to just experience the power of virtual reality, that someone in Cambodia can bring what he experienced in the late 90s, in the early 90s, 1970s, into VR, and talk to them, with the power of pictures and artistry, and it really resonated with them, and they got a deeper understanding of what the world was back then. And unfortunately, also they understood that what happened back then is still happening right now, as we all know what's happening in the world. So I think that is the power of virtual reality. We can experience what happened back then, this time, in this era. Yeah.
Well, Wayaki and Diana are Sanuch. They are also people who have really dedicated what they're doing to the young people in their country, to empowering them to understand how to use technology to tell their own stories, telling them that they're significant, that they matter, and their stories matter. And they don't just say it. Just like Wayaki puts headsets on people, or just like Sanuch put headsets on people, so does Wayaki and Diana puts headsets on young people in Kenya. And now they know how to come into a VR world, how to present themselves, how to talk. They've gained confidence, and they've gained really a sense of their own worth. So in this way, the story continues. And because Wayaki is better at technology than me, and because some platforms have affordances that others don't, he was able to record on the Engage VR platform at least one of the events that Sanuch did with the young people. The event that every week for several years now, Wayaki has been doing at what he calls the Africa VR Campus and Center. It's a weekly event on Thursdays in Engage, and sometimes he has actually pulled out the recording, because some of you know there's spatial video recording enabled in Engage, and that whole event that we just described is also recorded and has been brought out and shown yet to other audiences and touched them very deeply as well. So when people say that, technology takes away our humanity and isolates us, well, some of those things are true, but it also brings us together and makes our humanity come out in high relief in ways that nothing else could. And so we do have a couple people here today who are really continuing that tradition of showing young people how technology makes us human, not less human. So thanks for being here, Wayaki and Diana. Anything you want to add there, Wayaki? I know that you've never seen a microphone you don't like.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Thomas Zobach for curating this and for bringing it to VRChat in collaboration with my brother Tom Nicol. It's a convergence of consciousness when girls whose own mothers were not even born in the 1970s, for them to come and relive the moment of a man 1,000 miles away, 1,000 cultures away, and for them to relive it right from rural Kenya. We are not in Nairobi. We are in rural Kenya. We are in Kiambu, Kenya. And those girls experienced Sanuch's story from that place in the world. And they, in turn, thought about their mothers. And they talked and dedicated whatever they spoke to their mothers. In their mind is, what would I have done if I had to leave my mother on the operating table? Now, for me, the only thing I remember about that event is not Sanuch actually telling the story or the special recording. It's the hours that those girls spent meditating on their own as they wrote their tributes, because they knew it's not going to be easy for a man to say that they killed their mom. And at the end, as you have all witnessed, those who have seen the special recording, most of them went and gave Sanuch that virtual hug and tried to convince him that he didn't kill his mother. And it to me, that was, the most, it was like the most ultimate moment of that convergence of cultures and consciousness, because they have finally come to absorb everything that Sanuch said, and they in turn want to give him that peace that they thought he so much longed for. And we went our separate paths, knowing that we have touched each other's heart, and that to me is one of the best stories I could have had. I'm glad, brother, that you could at least tell it as he would have and appreciate the essence that was around it. Thank you very much for giving me this.
Yeah, it kind of shows how life goes. That day when I didn't get on the plane, what I did instead the next day was begin leading events in Alt Space VR. I knew that people were going to be looking at death up close and personal in a way that they weren't used to. There was going to be loss at a level that we weren't used to. And I thought that if people would find these little events in VR, they would be able to come and just speak about their own experience and not try to get fixed, but just to be able to say it and be witnessed. And it was through those events that I met Paul and Wayaki and Diana. And so instead of zigging left toward continuing to go back in Cambodia, I might live in Cambodia now, for Pete's sakes, I zagged to a real commitment to VR that's led me to so many close relationships. But I just feel like Wayaki and Diana are people in my life. I wake up in the morning and I think about them like I would, my neighbor, that kind of thing. That's what VR can do. So, and Thomas, Thomas is doing the same thing. You're right now it looks little, but I hope someday we'll look back and you will have created the conference format that brings people together all around the world to listen to. Some things are intellectual and some things are emotional and some things are artistic. You got all of those threads, but we share it together. We feel like we're in that space together. So keep going forward with that, Thomas. And I think that's what I got for now. Any final words from you?
Just thank you, as I already did, Tom, for running this session. And for me, it just mentioned the role that virtual reality can maybe contribute to what I said in the beginning, to not lose the faith in humanity, because we have the chance through virtual reality to be closer to each other than on a screen. That is what I believe. And this is why I will continue with the series of events under the name Immersive X, and hopefully see you all again in the near future. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for coming here.
And one more thing, Thomas. Carlos, this CP Austin 2000, we are also blessed to have probably the best videographer, not probably, certainly the best videographer in VR recording this event. It's been streaming on YouTube. And if you want to relive it in any way or share it with someone else, I don't know, somehow will you be getting the link to that YouTube out there, Thomas?
Yes, I will. Yeah.
Okay.
I will share it. Yeah.
So we haven't done a spatial video recording, but we got the greatest VR videographer making a recording. So this event will live too. And then we are currently planning on reprising this on Sunday. Is it the same time? I can't quite remember. Do you remember?
The time is different. So
yeah,
CEST, it's 4:00 in the morning. So for you, Tom, it's a little bit later, I guess. It's in the late afternoon, evening, right, in the west coast of the U.S.
Yeah.
And I just want to also thank you, John, with always the team with Carlos, to include him in our praise for this great live stream you created today. So and if you know people, if you like this event, tell them we will have a rerun on Sunday. Thank you all.
Evening Sunday, so it's a little bit more optimized for North America. It's kind of early on a work day right now in North America, but maybe more people will be able to show up at that time. So anyway, we will keep doing VR events. Hopefully, it's going to be tough to find one with this kind of power, but we'll keep working on it. Thanks again. And feel free to just look around, check out some of the 360 bubbles, look at the pictures, and we'll see you around the metaverse, folks. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.